Man, Benny, I'll tell you, man, te aventaste. You did a great job on that video. I've seen it 2 or 3 times right now on my big screen here at my house. I'm watching it. Man, Benny, I'll tell you, you know what? We better hold on to you because I have a feeling that Hollywood's going to be pulling you one of these days. Great video, Benny. Outstanding video.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, with that said, welcome back to the show, guys. You know what? Last week we were at that conference, and we'll talk a little bit about it. But, guys, we were going to do the shout-outs real quick because I want to get into this show. This is going to be, once again, an outstanding show, and we have a legend. But I'm not going to introduce the legend. That's Benny's job. But let's do shout-outs real quick. Carlo, do you have any shout-outs?
Yeah, shout out to the Calexico Police Department. These guys, man, I'm telling you, hooking and booking, taking guns off the street, doing an excellent job, man. They if you guys look at their Facebook page, Calexico Police Officer Association, these guys are hooking and booking, man. Fentanyl, guns. I mean, it's the Wild West down here, man. So hats off to these guys. They haven't slowed down. The heat's up, and they're also out there kicking ass. So shout out to my homies.
Hey, God bless them. God bless St. Quentin Death Row. God bless all the correctional officers St. Quentin that are watching the show. God bless you for the great job that you're doing, and thank you for watching the show today. Big Sean, I know you have a shout out for Maui. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, shout out to all our brothers and sisters out in Lahaina and in Maui. We know what you're going through. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, and you know what? Just like San Diego County, you will rebuild. You will be better.
Aloha love to you guys, man.
Yeah.
Aloha, man.
Amen. Lieutenant Petros from St. Quentin, I understand you got a new job change. I believe now you're in IST. Lieutenant, congratulations on your new job assignment. Benny, I know you have a special shout out, and here's your slide. Go ahead, Benny.
Well, I got one for shout out for Ariel and Danny at Hot Mic on the Line. They're back. They're back online. Please watch and subscribe to their show. They got great stories and they got great guests. Both are correctional officers in the Imperial Valley. Welcome back, guys.
Hey, Benny, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I was just to say, I mean, and I hate to interrupt, but Hot Mic, remember they're having a new YouTube channel, so yes. I think they're gonna move over to the YouTube platform and not the Facebook anymore pretty soon.
Right. They are already there. They already started. I think they're already a couple of chapters, maybe.
Yeah.
But jump on their show. I mean, it's a great show. They're on YouTube, and just subscribe to their show and enjoy it. Another, it's not a shout out, but a good friend of ours, Sergio Camacho, who's a retired City of Bell police lieutenant, yesterday lost his best friend in a horrific crash in Las Vegas. I guess Las Vegas Metro Police was chasing a carjacking suspect. That suspect struck Sergio's friend, killing him. So we're sorry for your loss, Sergio.
Yeah, prayers for Sergio. Also, so we're saying prayers for my boxing co-host, Los Tres Chingones, Mike Zavala from Mikey TV. He went to Santo Domingo last week, came back with Bell's palsy. Prayer for you, my brother. With that said, guys, we're going to go real quick because we want to get into the show. We have a lot of great material to cover. But last week, Benny and I were at the International Latino Gang Investigators Conference. We had a wonderful time. It was an outstanding event. Anything else, Benny, you want to mention about the event?
Well, David was one of the guest speakers there, and he did an awesome job talking about current events in Mexico with the cartel violence and the military. Joe Preciado from the association, I mean, he did an outstanding job putting that show together. It was an outstanding conference. Richard Valdemar was there, Ruben Palomares, Felix Aguirre from San Diego PD showed up, and he sends his best wishes to you, Sean. Matilda and Teresa, who are part of the board, spoke, and they spoke about women in corrections, and they did an awesome job. And they gave Hector Bravo a lot of thank yous for having they used a lot of his input. We contacted Hector, and Hector was able to provide them with a lot of information on women in corrections. So they thank Hector for helping them out.
All right, Thomas Whitmore, welcome to the show. We also have Home Slice here, Home 2417. Welcome to the show. Louise, I believe from Riverside, welcome to the show. And we have JC, our old brother JC with us. Joe Preciado, Great job, brother, at the conference. And Justin Cunningham, welcome to the show. Benny, it's all yours. Take it over.
Okay, today we got to have Devin. We can hear that background noise. It sounds pretty bad. But anyway, we got Devin Hawkes today. Devin was a special agent with the Department of Corrections, Special Services Unit, Gang Intelligence Operations. Devin retired in 2011. 20 has debriefed numerous high-profile criminals, prison gang members. Devin has also conducted investigations involving the Charles Manson family members. Devin is a recognized expert, national expert in this field. We will talk to Devin tonight about the horrific 2001 San Francisco Diane Whipple horrific death by two Presa Canario dogs, known as the Dogs of War. That was a horrific incident. I remember as a new detective, I had a similar case like that, and it was not fun. Let me tell you, it's not pretty things to see, We're also going to discuss one of the Aryan Brotherhood's most violent and notorious gang members, which is Wendall Blue Norris. Welcome to the show, Devin.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Hey, Devin, you know what? Right now, I muted everybody. It looks like the feedback is coming from you. Do you have any televisions on, radios on, or cell phone on? Somebody that might be watching the show live in the house, by any chance?
Not in the room where I am.
Okay.
Nothing on.
Nothing on. Okay, that's where it was coming from because I muted you. All right. Well, listen, guys, let's go ahead and get started. And if it gets bad, I'll come back and discuss it one more time. Go ahead, Benny. It's all yours.
So, Devin, we're going to start with that. Just tell us briefly about your law enforcement background, what SSU is all about, your job. What was your job in SSU?
Well, first of all, Special Service Unit is like a police unit within the California Department of Corrections. We didn't have that many agents. When I became a special agent, there were probably about 30 statewide. And our responsibility was to conduct the investigations of criminal activity by parolees. We would go after escapees, fugitives. We worked with the prison gang units, investigative units, especially when it had to do with criminal activity involving people on the streets who were helping those inside the prison. So the Special Service Unit had full police duties, arrest, surveillance. We worked a lot with law enforcement locally, with the state, with the federal. Being such a small amount of agents, we relied quite a bit on working with our local law enforcement to apprehend fugitives and conduct our investigations. So I had an opportunity to work for the Special Service Unit after working at Pelican Bay State Prison.
Go ahead, Benny. Do you have another question?
No. Chalo.
Hey, thanks. Welcome back. Hey, Devin, real quick, we want to know is, first of all, we want to know, and this is it's a two-part question, but it's the same thing as who was Diane Whipple, and how did you get involved in the Diane Whipple dog mauling case?
Well, we would have to start before that case even happened. The year prior to Diane Whipple being murdered, the Aryan Brotherhood had invested in purchasing Presa Canario dogs. These dogs were huge. They were known to be quite vicious, quite large, and aggressive. And they wanted these dogs because of their notoriety. They were called dogs of war because anciently they were used in times of war to help fight against the enemies. And so two of the Aryan Brotherhood members were initially responsible for purchasing these Presa Canarios, but being inside Pelican Bay State Prison in the security housing unit, they didn't have direct access. So they used associates on the street to purchase the dogs and to take care of the dogs. Now, this was an Aryan Brotherhood business, not just of these two AB members. There were other AB members also excited about this. I remember reading one letter in which an AB member was encouraging his girlfriend, later his wife, to look these dogs up on the internet. He said, "These are our dogs, and they're wicked, and they're like the sharks that eat other sharks." And he ended with saying, "My kind of puppy." And there were other AB members who also invested money. Now, where did this money come from? This brings up a whole other issue, and that is with lawsuits. One of the AB members, Todd Ashker, he had figured out a way to stop the pneumatic doors that we had in the security housing unit. And one of his enemies was out on the tier, and he managed to stop the door from closing. But up in the booth, the officer could see the light that it showed like it was closed. But Ashker opened up that door, ran out there, and assaulted his enemy. And when he was told to stop, he wouldn't stop. The officer shot him in the wrist, and Ashker ended up suing the Department of Corrections and won something like $225,000. So part of the money, in fact, the majority of the money for the dogs came from that lawsuit. Now, Schneider also had a lawsuit for being x-rayed a lot. He was known to hide weapons in his rectum. There was a story that he also hid weapons inside of a wound in his leg. And so he was x-rayed often in order to see if he was carrying contraband. He had even used a weapon in the courtroom to stab one of the attorneys. Actually, it was a defense attorney for another Aryan Brotherhood. So lawsuits were a big moneymaker for them. So again, this is how the money was acquired to purchase these dogs.
Hey,
So,
Devin, was the AB also involved, like the Mexican mafia, in narcotics? Were they receiving? And what about taxes? Were they also at the time taxing local white street gangs at the time and receiving money funds like the Mexican mafia?
It wasn't the same as the Mexican mafia. We didn't ever hear about the dogs being used to guard meth labs, or that was the plan for the AB. The Mexican mafia did actually purchase some of the dogs. A Mexican mafia member named Jaco Padilla, through his wife, dogs were purchased from the AB. And there was a rumor that the dogs would be used to guard meth labs. So for the AB, it seemed more like a hobby, but they were excited about the notoriety of these dogs. So how I became involved was that a woman on the street who was caring for the dogs out of Hayfork, California, she had a small ranch there, and she let me know that she was entrusted by Schneider and Bretches to care for these Presa Canarios. The problem was that these dogs were vicious, and they killed her farm animals, even her pet cat. And Schneider was not very happy with her over the way that she was raising the dogs. It wasn't the way that they wanted. They wanted these vicious dogs. They wanted that notoriety. And they told her that she was raising sissy dogs. And so they worked at getting those dogs out of her care. Even it went to the point of threatening a lawsuit to get those dogs. But those dogs ended up going to their attorneys, Robert Noel and Marjorie Noller. And they took Bane and Hera, the name of the two big dogs, over to San Francisco, the Pacific Heights neighborhood, which is a very wealthy area. And in their apartment building, they kept these dogs. And Diane Whipple was an occupant, a resident of this apartment building. And on several occasions, the dogs were threatening towards her. And Robert Noel would brag about how this timid woman showed such fear for these dogs. And one day she was coming home after grocery shopping. She had the bag of groceries in her arms, and she was trying to get into her apartment, and the dogs broke loose from Marjorie Noller and attacked her and just literally destroyed her. She only had, I think, one sock left on her body. They had ripped all of her clothes off of her. The scene was so destructive and devastating, the blood everywhere. It was probably one of the worst crime scene photos that I've ever seen. But almost all the blood was drained from her body, and yet she was still alive barely when the first responders arrived to the scene. So Bane and Hera, under the care of these two attorneys, they ended up being killed because of their attack. And the attorneys, because of their negligence in caring for these dogs, the dogs had prior encounters with people. They ended up being prosecuted. And Jim Hammer, Kimberly Guilfoyle, they were the prosecutors from the San Francisco DA's office. They did a great job working with all the witnesses. I was also brought in as the gang expert for the case, as well as investigating threats against Kimberly, reportedly by the Aryan Brotherhood, that they wanted to kill her for her involvement in prosecuting Robert Noel and Marjorie Noller. This case was very, very strange. These two attorneys had more than just a professional client relationship with Schneider. There was a personal relationship, even somewhat of a sexual relationship, distantly, virtually, between Marjorie Noller and Schneider, with the approval of Robert Noel. They adopted Schneider as their son when he was 41 years old. Just a lot of strange things. They were using the confidential privilege that attorneys have with clients to communicate gang information, personal information. This case was just it was just very abnormal. Marjorie Noller ended up getting convicted and sentenced to a life sentence. Robert Noel, who wasn't actually present when the dogs broke away from Marjorie, but because of his responsibility for the dogs, he was also convicted and sent to prison. He did later parole and moved down to the San Diego area. And he passed away in 2018 in a nursing home in La Jolla. So that's kind of the background of it. Again, the crime scene was just horrific.
Hey, Devin, what about the AB members, Paul Schneider and Dale Bretches? Were they also prosecuted? Were they prosecuted for the murder also? What happened to them?
They were not prosecuted. Both were serving life sentences, and the district attorney's office decided it was not really in the best interest of the money and the public to go ahead and prosecute them when they were already serving life sentences. And the other thing was that they were entrusting other people with the care of the dogs. They never actually had physical control over them or direct oversight.
Home
Wow.
2417 also asks, I understand that Dale Bretches and Cornfed were involved, but did Devin say there was a third AB member involved?
There were more than three. There were several AB members. They called these dogs their dogs. They were AB dogs. They were gang dogs. But Schneider and Bretches were the ones who coordinated it. And I see a comment there about Knoller's conviction being overturned.
Yeah, by
That is
Seamus.
true. She did get her conviction overturned, but then it got reinstated. So Marjorie Knoller today is still serving that life sentence, and she's at a prison in Central California.
Hey, Devin. So who overturned the appellate court?
It may have even been the actual sentencing judge. I can't remember exactly, but the appellate court actually reinstated it. She has come up for consideration of release. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, he was the mayor or became the mayor of San Francisco during the time of this case. He was married during this case to Kimberly Guilfoyle. And he did have an opportunity to review this sentence on Marjorie Knoller, and he decided not to parole her at this time.
Chalo, if you want to, let's go ahead and start with question number 6, please.
Yeah, I mean, we covered a lot of the stuff. I saw it.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the prison hit on San Francisco DDA Kimberly? I don't know how to say Guilfoyle.
Go for it.
Yeah, and what type of security was utilized to keep her and Gavin Newsom during the time, the safe?
So there was a note that was discovered at Pelican Bay, and the note indicated that there was a threat on Kimberly Guilfoyle's life for her involvement in prosecuting the case. The Department of Corrections was contacted about this threat. I was assigned by my boss, Brian Perry, who is the assistant director in charge of all the SSU units. He sent me over to San Francisco to look into the threat and to support the protection of Kimberly. Kimberly had very good protection offered by the San Francisco Police Department, as well as other individuals. So she was well guarded. She also had a bulletproof vest. Everywhere where we went, she was always wearing that vest. And anyway, I didn't really provide a lot of protection there for her, but I was there around when she was under protection, and I did investigate the threat.
Hey Devin, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I need to interrupt you, and I'm probably going to get blasted by our viewers.
No.
Is it just real quick? Like, so what was her demeanor during this whole time? I mean, you're talking about protection, and then the second question to that is her demeanor, and then how are you feeling knowing that that she's got one of the biggest targets probably during the time in that area? I mean, how'd you deal with that? How did she deal with it? How'd you deal with it?
You know, she actually was very professional throughout. She showed a lot of sympathy and empathy towards the people affected by the case, the family of the victim, as well as the other witnesses. She did not really put a lot of focus on herself. Her main objective was to prosecute the case and to move forward. She didn't seem to show or give a lot to the threat itself, other than she was aware of it and took the precautions. I felt she was well protected. I wasn't greatly concerned by that. For one thing, most of the Aryan Brotherhood members were already inside, and we weren't getting specific individuals identified who would be carrying out that threat.
Wow.
Sean, go ahead.
Hey, and Devin, hey, thanks for coming back. Question I got is, how did the Aryan Brotherhood handle such a high-profile case involving them, especially the relationship between Schneider, the dogs, Noel, and Noller?
They were actually very embarrassed by the whole situation. They got a lot of negative news. They did not want to really be associated with all this negativity that was out in the media about them. Schneider himself ended up being the target of assault because of the negative attention he brought. And as a result, he ended up leaving the gang. The other thing is, they were embarrassed by the whole relationship between the attorneys and Schneider. The sexual nature, the just very bizarre behaviors of all the people involved.
Hey, can you tell us about Schneider's prosecution and conviction of the murder for a Sonoma County Sheriff's deputy?
Well, what happened was Schneider had a girlfriend by the name of Brenda Moore, and she was doing a lot of things for him on the street. They even did a robbery up in Crescent City, in which they took a woman hostage. That woman happened to be the wife of a Mexican mafia member who was working at a cleaners there in Crescent City. But they were doing several robberies. They were planning on doing some murders. And what happened was, one of the AB members by the name of Scully Bob, his name is Robert Scully, he got out, and Brenda Moore accompanied him to go down, and they were going to be doing some crimes. And while they were in the process of committing a crime, Sonoma County Sheriff Deputy Frank Trejo happened to be in that area, and it ended up into a shootout in which Deputy Trejo was killed. Because of Schneider's involvement in planning all this, he also was charged with the murder of Sonoma County Sheriff Deputy Frank Trejo.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What
Benny.
happened to Schneider?
Hold tight, Sean. Benny has a quick question, then we'll come back to
Okay.
Schneider. Benny, go ahead.
Hey, Brian, I just wanted to get this before we go into Blue, but there was information that the dogs were for sale to the Mexican mafia for use for security. Is that true? What do you know about that?
So Jaco Padilla's girlfriend or wife, she claimed to be both. Maria Yentada was her name. And she ended up getting some of the dogs, or at least one of them. And there was information that the Mexican mafia wanted to use the dogs for guarding meth labs and protecting their criminal enterprises. So they did end up getting dogs. Jaco ended up leaving the Mexican mafia, and he ended up dying while he was on parole. Maria Yentada happened to get indicted on a RICO case when she was planning to kill 2 Mexican mafia members down in the La Puente area. So there was a lot of stuff happening during that time, and the dogs had their connection to Jaco Padilla's operation over Azusa and La Puente.
So they were being used though.
I don't know if they were actually used at meth labs. I kind of lost contact of what happened with the dogs after the whole dog mauling case.
How many dogs did they have, Devin? Besides the other 2 that were involved in the mauling?
I'm not even sure how many they had. They had Bain and Hera, and then there were, I believe they might have had a litter, or I'm not even sure how many they had.
Real quick, Sean, for your next question, Big Joe 67, welcome to the show from Salinas. Donahue has a quick question for you, Seamus. I'm guessing Mr. Hawkes read the red zone. Did Aphrodite Jones get it right? Do you know what he's talking about? This Seamus?
Yes, I do. Aphrodite Jones is a true crime author, and she came in to cover the case. I spoke to her. She interviewed a lot of people involved in the case, and her book Red Zone is about that dog mauling trial, and she did a pretty good job of covering what the case was about. She even had some of the gruesome crime scene photos in there. Perhaps there are some people who do not agree with some of her portrayals of them, and I understand that. But I think for the most part, she got the case accurate.
Great question, Seamus. Go ahead, Big Sean.
Hey, whatever happened to Schneider? And did he get debriefed?
Yeah, the FBI started the debriefing process, and then they asked me if I would accompany them to complete the debrief with Schneider. He was in the federal system at the time, and I flew back with the 2 FBI agents to Missouri, Agent Suzanne Skills and Agent Noel de Burrell, both excellent FBI agents, and went back and I saw Schneider. I didn't know how he would react by seeing me. I was surprised when I saw his face light up with a big smile, and he said, "Oh, they brought in the big dog." So, I mean, we've known each other for a lot of years, and I did a lot of investigations involving him. Anyway, I was happy that I didn't have a big conflict doing that debrief. So he did get out. I don't know where he is today. I don't know if he went into witness protection, but my completion with him was the debrief.
Hey, Devin. So this is Chalo. So there comes a time, I think, when the players realize that the game's over, and I guess that's when he saw you walk in. He probably said, "You know what? I'm debriefing already. There's no." I mean, he's not going to be pissed off. He's done, right?
He had already had interviews with the FBI, and so I was part of the next wave.
Yeah, because I figured that this is a time, like I said, it's just like us, when we retire, we think we can go on forever, then we realize, you know what, I think it's time for me to hang my hat, just like them. If they make it that long, they probably said, you know what, that's why a lot of them drop out.
A lot of them become targets and make that decision to leave the gang. Some of them just get tired and just realize that this is not anything good for them. There's not really a future in it. And they just decide to leave to make better decisions for themselves.
Go ahead, Big Sean.
Yeah, let's change the subject a little bit and discuss one of Aryan Brotherhood's most notorious members was Wendall Blue Norris. What was your involvement with him, and was he involved in, and how violent was he?
Well, Wendall Norris was known as Blue. Some say because his eyes were sky blue. Some say it's because his whole body was covered in tattoos. That prison ink, which is kind of a bluish black color. Wendall Norris actually was an early member of the Aryan Brotherhood, but not one of the founders or one of the first members. He came in about 1970. He actually joined an Aryan Brotherhood while he was at Tehachapi, the California Correctional Institution. There were several groups claiming to be Aryan Brotherhood at that time, but the one that came from the Bluebird Gang that evolved into the Aryan Brotherhood, that became the one that was recognized as the official Aryan Brotherhood. And the other groups were told that they were just mock Aryan Brotherhoods. So Norris actually joined one of those mock ABs before he ended up getting sanctioned at Folsom State Prison to be a member of the official AB. He had participated in several murders. He ended up working his way up to being one of the top commission members when the AB restructured with an identifiable leadership. In about 1980, the AB started with a commission, a 3-man commission to oversee the whole Aryan Brotherhood. Underneath that commission was a council. And like in the case of the dog mauling trial, Del Breches was a member of the council, but he was not one of the commission members. And Schneider wasn't on the council at all. But in 1980, Blue Norris was one of the top AB members. He was responsible for calling a lot of murders, some of them for personal reasons, some of them for gang business. When he got up to Pelican Bay, by the time he got up there, he was already at odds with the other commission members. The AB had split into 2 factions. Blue Norris had his faction, and then the other 2 commission members were part of another faction. And he understood that there was no positive future for him. And so he and I sat for many hours and talked about the AB, and I did his debrief interview and got him out of the gang. He had talked to other investigators over the years, but the one that I did was the official debrief. There's a question there about, did Blue call the hit on Jack Mahone in 1979, and why was Jack Mahone targeted? Jack Mahone was actually killed on the streets with Sherelle Hendricks was New York Crane's later wife, Sherelle Crane, and New York Crane and Sherelle actually were involved in that murder of Jack Mahone. He started acting funny, and they took him out. I don't know all the details of that murder, but I know that it was an AB hit.
We have another question from Neat Wave. What hits was Blue involved in that you can talk about?
Well, there were several murders at Folsom Prison in the 1980s. Blue was behind some of those. John Hodges, for example, was murdered on Blue's orders. There were other, I can't name all of them, but because Blue wasn't the only one involved in calling the actual murders, it was an AB sanction thing, and he was part of it. Some of the murders were actually coordinated from Blinky Griffin. During the 1980s, there were victims that were members of the AB and others were sex offenders. Probably one of the most famous murders that Blue ordered was on an AB member named Irish Murphy, Dennis Murphy, 1987. And this happened at the new prison at Folsom. I believe it might have even been the first homicide that happened at the new Folsom prison. The ones who killed Murphy were Todd Ashker, the one I mentioned before with the lawsuit, and Bob Tanner. So anyway, those there were quite a few. But when Norris got out, it's kind of funny, the whole mentality. I asked him, what do you hope will be your future? And he kind of caught me off guard. He said, I hope someday I'll get let out of prison. I hope I will be able to move to Montana and I'll be a pig farmer. And he was communicating with other pig farmers trying to learn about it. Just something I wouldn't have expected coming from the head of the Aryan Brotherhood.
Hey, Devin,
real quick, Sean. I want to just acknowledge Born Bad. Welcome to the show, Blinky Griffin. Right? We got Blinky, we got Blue. Who was higher in the anarchy of the Aryan Brotherhood? And could you tell us a little bit about Blinky Griffin? It's Griffin, correct?
Griffin, yeah, Robert Lee Griffin is his name. He actually was a member of the AB before Blue Norris. Again, not a founder, but he was an early member. And when the AB restructured in 1980, Blue Norris and Blinky Griffin were on that commission. They were the two of the top three members of the Aryan Brotherhood. And so with that leadership, they called a lot of hits. They started to develop policy for the gang. This is where there were differences between Norris's direction and Blinky Griffin's direction. They had different sets of rules. One side said no more drugs being used by the gang. The other side thought, how could you not allow drugs when we have so many members who are drug addicts? And so these two had conflicts all the time, and it got to the point where the two of them kind of targeted each other. But while we were at Pelican Bay, Blinky Griffin and one of the council members, Eddie Burnett, decided that they would try a new ploy, and they took out an ad in the newspaper saying that they were no longer members of the Aryan Brotherhood. It was in the classified section of the local newspaper in Crescent City. This was viewed with a lot of skepticism by the other members of the AB. Eventually, Blinky Griffin and Eddie Burnett both got demoted, but they were still considered to be members in good standing, and they were considered to be active as much as they wanted to be. So that's a little bit of background. The two members, two leaders, were at odds with one another, and now neither one is in the leadership.
Go ahead, Big Sean.
Yeah, there's a story apparently about old Mr. Blue here trying to conceal a firearm in his rectum in an attempt to escape. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Blue wanted to escape. He was always talking about it. He even tried to stretch his rectum so that it could handle contraband that was a little bit larger. And what he did was he taped deodorant containers together and put that up his rectum, trying to stretch it. And the containers ended up getting turned sideways, and he ended up having to go get them surgically removed. So he was with the colostomy bag for a little while. But he had an associate who actually got a gun in at another prison, the guy's wife brought the gun in or got it to him. And then he got that gun to Blue Norris. So while Blue Norris was going out for a custody hearing, a child custody hearing, he was being transported by the county sheriff, and he managed to remove that gun from his rectum and held it up to shoot the deputies that were transporting him. They saw the danger. They actually opened up the door and jumped out of the van and let it just go by itself with Norris in the back. And the van crashed, and Norris was thrust forward. The deputies got control of Norris, and that was the end of his escape attempt, as well as his possession of the gun.
Damn, that's a shitty situation to be in.
Literally.
That's a crappy story, dude.
Hey, so did they start calling him right guard after that? Since he had all those
No.
Correct him, damn near killed him.
I think people were pretty careful with saying anything that he might take offense to.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the guy's willing to put all that stuff up there, I could just imagine, he's a nut.
Yeah. Benny, it's all yours.
That happened in Solano County, didn't it? Solano County?
Yes.
There were deputies from there? Yeah. I remember talking to some of the Solano County deputies one time, and they were talking about that incident. Devin, how did Blue die? There's so many stories on it, and I believe the story that I hear from Richard Valdemar, and I've heard it from other people like yourself, Brian Perry, and then you hear all these other rumors and all these other shows that no, it was a hit, blah blah blah. How did he die?
Well, after his debrief, we ended up moving him to a facility where there were other dropouts and people who required protective custody. Anyway, I was told, I wasn't there, of course, where it happened, but I was told that he actually took his own life. Now, Blue Norris was a pretty tough guy. He was very good at making weapons, and I have been told that what he did was he took a knife and he stabbed himself several times in the front, in his chest, in his abdomen, something like 5 times. And this is what was reported by the staff at the prison, by some of the witnesses, and it was ruled a suicide. And this has created a lot of skepticism of how does a person stab himself 5 times or so and commit suicide. So there are some stories out there. Some people would like to believe that it was someone else who took his life.
Devin, Benny and I were with Rich Valdemar last week in Vegas at this conference. We spent 4 days with him, and the guy's a legend. What an outstanding man. The history behind the stories of everything that we talk about on this show. But he mentioned the prison. Do you remember, Benny, what the name of the prison was? He says that he was in, they let two individuals out, and one was a Sureño and one was Blue Norris. And I guess like the old Viking days, Rich had the write-up on it. And he says that he knelt down and then he grabbed the knife and he stuck it in his heart. And when he didn't die at first, he kept sticking in his heart till he finally died. That's what he said. Do you know what prison that was in? Was it Calipatria by any chance?
No.
I believe it was Calipatria where it happened. And that's what I was told, is that he stuck himself in the heart first and then just kept sticking himself until he succumbed to his injuries.
I didn't remember hearing Calipat, but he did mention that he picked a spot at the prison yard that was not covered by the gunner, and it was just a little small area, but he already had it known, and he told the Sureño, "You go walk that way. I'm going to walk this way," and there was only 2 people in the yard. So you hear a lot of stories with 2 men walk up to him. I was in the yard. I saw it. That's BS. That's not true. that's make-up stories, But he said it was that kind of a suicide by them it was kind of a Viking thing, something from the past. But we as cops, I mean, we've seen people kill themselves the same way. I mean, how many times have we responded to a house where the guy killed himself that way? He stabbed himself. So it's not something that's rare. I mean, it happens. It happens not often, but it does happen.
Well, Blue Norris was a very tough individual. I mean, he was fit. He worked out a lot. I was told he'd do about 3,000 burpees a day.
Wow.
He was pretty tough. You have a question there from Seamus Donahue. Where does John Youngster Stinson play into this? John Stinson became one of the commission members. So I believe he's still probably at the top of the AB. He was at the time that I retired, one of the 3 top commission members.
Dang. 3,000 burpees, man. I just got my stomach started hurting just thinking about that.
Well, I never watched him do that, so that might be an urban legend too.
Yeah, well, I mean, he looks pretty fit in those, and I'm pretty sure he did a lot of them.
Yeah.
And we got VP60. Welcome to the show, brother. Yes, he stabbed himself in Calipatria D Yard Gym in Calipatria. Once again, people are saying that.
Calipatria.
Do we know what year that was?
In the year.
Yeah, it's right there on your
2003. Yeah, it was already open.
2003. Yeah.
So by the time that he did that, he had already been out of the gang for 10 years because it was in 1993 that I did the debrief with him.
This home to 2417, Cuate Grajeda's crime partner from the streets. Was he Cuate Grajeda's crime partner? Devin?
Yes, John Stinson and John
Stinson.
Stinson and
okay.
Cuate Grajeda were crime partners. Because of that, a lot of the ABs actually support Cuate Grajeda. When the Mexican Mafia had some divisions going on, Stinson, as well as other AB members, were very supportive of Cuate, who had another faction.
It sounds like home 2417 is probably a correctional officer. Was probably working in Calipatria at the time. Please let us know if you have. Thank you for your service if you did. He says it was a 7.5-inch flat piece of metal stock sharpened to a point and referred to as a shank was recovered from the scene. Sounds like he was probably working the facility.
Or at least he saw the actual reports.
Yes, he saw the actual reports.
Yeah, thanks for that information. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Going back to that dog case, I still remember my case, and I was really a fairly new detective. It was just horrific, a horrific crime scene. And I remember after the crime scene, we were at the scene. I was at the scene probably for 4 to 5 hours, processing the scene. And later on, I went to the hospital to check on the victim and, collect evidence and take pictures. And it was horrific. It was it was like a horror story. I mean, I went out there to see her, and she was faceless, and God, just horrible. I can imagine what happened in San Francisco that night. I mean, that day, just not a pretty scene,
Yeah.
I remember we did a necropsy on the 2 dogs that attacked my victim, and they had a little bit over 4 pounds of human flesh in them.
Hey, Devin, you got a question from Cagapalo. Has your
Hold on. Hey, Cagapalo, that was my nickname. Did you take it away from me or what?
Pretty good question.
Good question, Cagapalo. Tocayo.
So I have not heard of anyone being killed in China.
In Chino.
Oh, in Chino. Okay.
Chino, yes.
Okay, a guy subpoenaed as a character witness.
Yeah, guy was subpoenaed as character witness. AB was subpoenaed as character witness, and they killed him in Chino in the 80s.
Well, there were several murders in Chino. They were AB members. Loser Clark is one of them. T-Bone Gibson is another. Whether they were out, were down there for being character witnesses, that I'm not sure. But the AB did kill both of those, and Blinky Griffin actually killed one of those.
And
Says
one of
I
them was
believe the
named
guy was
Bruno?
named Bruno.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'll have to do a little checking on that one.
Well, you know what? You could answer it next week because you're going to be with us again. We look
Okay.
forward to it. You know what? I know Benny's going to talk about it real quick, but if you could also next week, I know you're going to be touching on the Aryan Brotherhood, their structure and so forth, their history. Talk a little bit also about the Nuestra Familia. We never got a chance to talk about it, but I have a question for you. If you don't have the answer, don't give it today. Maybe next week you could answer. Michael Sosa, Manos, Babo's brother. How did he die? And next week, I mean, that's a question that I have. I've heard a lot of rumors. I've heard a lot of theories. If you could find out how, when he died, one of them is very interesting, but we're not going to discuss it. We're going to hear it next week. If you could do that, that would be great, Devin.
Okay, I'll have that information for you next week then.
Perfect.
Yeah, just so your listeners know, Michael Sosa was part of the head of the Nuestra Familia.
Mhm.
Babo Sosa had been the leader before they restructured under a Mesa, and Mano Sosa became one of the Mesa members long after Babo Sosa was done.
You know what? I can't wait to hear it. I know next week we're going to have a great show. We'll touch a little bit on the AB. We discussed it a lot today, but the Nuestra Familia, there's a lot of questions that I personally have that I'll talk to Benny. We'll write them down for you that we'll be able to hear the answers from you next week. With that said, guys, our time is gone. We look forward to having you next week. Chalo, any more questions? Chalo, Benny, or Sean for Devin before he leaves? We'll have him back next week.
No.
Wait till next week.
We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Benny, anything else?
Well, there was a lot of people that were mentioned today about the AB. So a lot of those people we were talking about today are scheduled for next week. We're going to talk in depth more about those guys and some other AB guys. And if we have time, because Devin and I had talked that he might come back just to do strictly the Nuestra Familia, since there's so much information on that to talk about. So we might just do AB next week and then at a later time do the NF, or we'll see. I mean, we'll play with it. See what we can do.
Yeah. Hey, once again, Devin, thank you very much, brother. We'll see you next week. We look forward to having you. Thank you, and God bless you, Devin. Have a good
Thank you very much, and God bless you all too. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin.
Thanks, Devin.
Hey guys, what an outstanding show! I mean, these especially everybody that's been asking all these great questions. It's been outstanding show. With that said, guys, anything else, Sean? Anything you want to discuss briefly, just on current events?
We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and we haven't had time to talk about it. And I'll just throw it out there right now. This canine incident in Circleville, Ohio. When I saw that, actually, a couple of friends got a hold of me and said, "Hey, have you seen this?" And I watched it, and I understand that they fired the guy right off the bat. What he did with was deploying his dog was not right by any stretch of the imagination. The suspect had his hands up. You don't deploy your dog up there. And in fact, the video I saw, he actually walked the damn dog almost up to him. And people were yelling at him not to deploy the dog. That is not how you use a police service dog by any stretch of the imagination. And now his department supposedly fired him. They're saying it wasn't because of the deployment. It was because he was told not to talk about the incident. Either way, you can't fire somebody right off the bat for violation of department policy. You have to have the investigation. You have to give them their due. He should not be anywhere near a police canine in the future, in my opinion.
Hey, Sean, do you think they're going to prosecute him?
They could very well. They could very well. I mean, under color authority, yeah. But that's not my call. I don't think he should be on a police department anyway because his judgment is for shit.
the pendulum is swinging right now. Don't doubt it. They do prosecute.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sean. I mean, if they fired him for talking about it as an administrator, bro, that's a good one there. Especially, it's going to save you all kinds of money. Because police officers. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody has Bill of Rights, and
Yeah.
going through the long stretch, you were a lieutenant. Man.
Yeah.
Hey, I order you not to talk about it. The guy says, "Screw you."
Yeah, he's out there talking to everybody.
Hey,
Yeah.
how long is your investigation on this date?
Well,
This date, I told him not to talk about it. Hey, we talked
go
about
back
it.
to
See ya.
the incident in LA a few years back. You got I believe it was a deputy. He put this kid on the car, and looking at it, he slams this kid up against the car.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, I was in a SLI class out in Sacramento. One of the guys in the class actually ended up having to go and investigate that through internal affairs. And, their mayor said, okay, I want this guy fired. They fired this deputy, and he got his job back. Why? Because nobody did an investigation. When they come out and did the investigation, this suspect grabbed his groin, and he naturally reacted with the force that he used. I mean, don't make a judge when they say, oh, we're going to fire you, we're going to take it. You can't do that. Administrators and people, have to tell their elected officials, you cannot do that. There's a police officer Bill of Rights. They have to follow through with that.
Hey, Sean, but politicians have always been the same, but now they're even more. Now it's like, so they go out there, they'll throw you out in like your piece of garbage without doing your due diligence. I mean, and like I said, I mean, as an officer, we've all gotten in trouble, and we wanted to get through our internal affairs right away, especially when you didn't do anything. You're going like, hey, man, let's question me right here, right now. And they're like, no, get your attorney. I didn't do anything wrong. So, I'm not going to, say anything that I didn't do. So, I mean, my whole thing here is that we continue this trend where we have politicians that like to go out there and put us in, under scrutiny of the public jury. I mean, and at that point, it's really hard to undo what you just did, especially when you throw an officer, on and you talk all this bad stuff about him, and then all of a sudden they do an investigation, and the guy comes back that he didn't do anything.
Or they try to prosecute the officer for an incident, like we had one in San Diego where he's off duty with his wife, and it was a road rage incident, and I responded to it as a field lieutenant, and next thing I know, this guy is getting he got removed from the department without pay. He lost his house and all this other stuff. And they prosecuted, and everybody's thinking, well, wait, why are you prosecuting him? She came after him in her vehicle. Now, the fact that, he fired into her car and hit her 9-year-old son, which he didn't see. And I believe he hit her in the shoulder too. And they took him to court. I mean, they tried prosecuting him. I mean, the same DA's office, that the DA that was very much one of our go-to guys when we needed a warrant or something, we went to them, right? Anyways, and he was found not guilty. But in the meantime, he's lost his home. He's lost a lot of stuff. He's back on the department now, and I wish him well, because I understand he just had an incident on his motorcycle, and our prayers are with you, Ed. So,
hey, Sean, and then we see that one guy that keeps getting away with everything all the time and never gets no sort of discipline.
Oh, yeah.
And then he breaks the law all the time. Doesn't even. I mean, those guys are lucky. Either or he has
they got somebody back in their place.
So he's got a thumb drive with pictures of all these people in compromising positions.
Hey
guys, let me just answer Cagapalo's question real quick. Cagapalo, yes, I know very much about that case. I actually solved that case. It had nothing to do with VAT. The individual that killed him, we'll talk about it next week on the show, but it had nothing to do with VAT. This guy was a bully, Steve Ochoa, and they killed him in Otay. I know all about the case. Like I said, I caught the killer in Mexico on that one case. Guys, with that said, Benny, why don't you go ahead and just give us your last thoughts, Benny?
Just like every night. I mean, just for those working that thin blue line, putting their lives on the risk, prepare for the fight of your life, man. Fight dirty, get tough and mean, train, know the job. The job is dangerous. We all know that. Don't hesitate, because remember, hesitation kills you. Remember those deadly errors of others. Don't miss those danger signs. Stay in the fight and survive. Never give up. Remember, experience comes from our many mistakes. And finally, to everyone, just wake up, America, and see what's going on right now in our country.
Big Sean.
Just live tactically and always be safe.
Chalo.
Well, like I've always, integrity means everything. I mean, your word is worth more than gold. Because once you're deemed a liar or a person that's got no integrity, you're done. Not only your career but your life. So integrity means everything, guys.
And guys, don't forget, live a purpose-driven life. Live every day like it's your last day on earth, and you're never too old or too young to volunteer. If you retired, you're still a sheepdog. Volunteer in every way you can, because once again, we are put here on earth to save lives, to mentor, and to continue fighting the fight. Thank you, and God bless you. We'll see you next week. We're going to have an outstanding show. God bless you. Have a good week.